Hello, beautiful people. I'm so glad to see you this morning. I love the vibe when we're all greeting each other and we've got the Common Ground Band jamming in the background and we're welcoming each other to this place. I'm really glad to see every one of you today. Just a few reminders. Our focus for the day, in a minute, we're going to welcome Adria Nassim and her helping dog. I'm not going to say his name because I'm going to interrupt him. Thomas, right? Because I want him to stay focused. And we're going to have some conversation today about disability and neurodiversity and what that means as children of God, how we welcome and how we learn together. A reminder, because we're going to have a Q&A session afterwards, of our covenant of how we interact when we're having conversation with each other. We are respectful to each other. We listen, and we allow others to speak before we say something again. We are open to new people and new ideas. We take risks, and we prioritize participation over perfection, always. That's one of our mottos here. And we use I statements and speak from our own experiences. And now I'm going to invite John to come and to read our gospel lesson. I'll get you a microphone. There you go.
Today's scripture lesson is from John chapter 15, verses 9 through 17. As the Father loved me, I too have loved you. Remain in my love. If you keep my commandment, you will remain in my love, just as I keep my Father's commandment and remain in his love. I have said this thing to you so that my joy will be in you and your joy will be complete. This is my commandment. Love each other just as I have loved you. No one has greater love than to give up one's life for one's friend. You are my friend if you do what I command you. I didn't call you servants any longer, because servants don't know what the master is doing. Instead, I call you friends, because everything I heard from my Father I've made known to you. You didn't choose me, but I chose you, and I appointed you, so that you could go and produce fruit, and so that your fruit could last. As a result, whatever you ask the Father in my name, he will give you. I've given you my commandment so that you can go and love each other. Listen to what the scripture is saying to the church.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, AJ.
Have you ever seen a dog be trained during church?
It's important, though, isn't it?
You have to be very consistent, yes.
Yes, all the time we have to be training that sweet pup of yours. So I'm going to introduce you a little bit, Adria. Adria works for the Indiana Institute on Disability and Community, and you have recently also received a position with Bloom Magazine. Congratulations! Yes. That's very exciting. We can't wait to see. And when's your first article come out? Do you know?
I don't know. I just know that I had to have it to Malcolm Abrams, who's the editor, by March 1st.
Okay.
So it's in his hands
now? It's in his hands. Okay. So it'll be coming in the next few months. You'll let us know.
Yes.
When to keep an eye out for it. Wonderful. And Adria and her service dog, who's the sweetest, most well-behaved in the world, right?
Generally, yes, he's very good, although for crying out loud, he is a dog. They all have their moments, yes.
Yes, absolutely. And you've been part of Open Door, and now you're part of Common Ground.
Yes, and let me just say, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, you go.
But y'all can, address the dog and talk about the dog.
Oh, we can?
You can.
Okay.
Although you don't use his real name, which she just said, Thomas. We also have a congregation member by that name, I think.
Yes.
We were told during team training with ICANN, which is the Indiana Canine Assistant Network out of Zionsville. If you are familiar, they also have a student organization on campus called ICANN at IU that helps train the young dogs and the puppies in training on campus. But we were told to pick a pretend name to use with the dog in public around other people, so everybody calls him Mr. T.
Okay.
Because if everybody says his actual name, he doesn't know who to pay attention to and who to listen to. So yeah, his name in public is Mr. T.
Okay, so we'll use Mr. T. That's acceptable.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. And so tell us a little bit, Adria, about how you and Mr. T, and before Mr. T, Lou, came to be part of Open Door and First Methodist. How'd you end up here?
So many people who don't know me well and don't spend extended time with me think that, like many of you, I came to Bloomington just for IU, and I actually did not. IU was part of it, but I primarily came actually for a private independent living skills and vocational support program for college students with, if you allow the term, higher functioning autism and learning disability, called the College Internship Program. They serve 18 to 26-year-olds with documented diagnoses of autism spectrum and learning disability, attention deficit, all that kind of thing. I came in 2008, and then I finished in July of 2013, but I took a break after my first year and went back and finished my degree at my original school, which was a private Catholic school, Brescia. And a lot of people ask me, did you go because you were Catholic? And no, I actually did not. I went because they had a very well-developed program for students with a learning disability. So yeah.
And how did that CIP program work? What did you learn in that program?
It is a very holistic program for students that are exiting high school with, as I said, autism and learning disability. A lot of colleges, although students with autism, particularly higher, cognition level autism, are capable of completing a college degree, but they may not have the independent living skills, they may not have the social skills, but the difficulty that many parents run into with just putting them on a college campus is that many colleges assume you come in with the prior knowledge of knowing how to do laundry, knowing how to dress appropriately for an interview and answer interview questions to secure a job, knowing how to even, sit at a board game night and make conversation with peers, how to look someone in the eye, how to decode social behavior, all that stuff. And many children and young adults later on with autism have to be directly taught those kinds of things. So yeah, it was all that stuff.
Great. And how did you? And at that point in time too, after that, you had your first dog, right? Yes. Tell us about Lou and what she's up to these days.
Lou, wow. That's a long story, but I'll just tell you, my parents. Actually, the reason my parents thought about the idea of me getting a service dog came from one of the staff members at the college internship program. He has now actually passed away, but his name was Dr. Don Weller. He, for a number of years, was the child psychologist there on staff, and then later on moved to the Monroe County Correctional Facility and was director of their mental health services. But he, when he was 24, was on a bike trip with friends in graduate school, and this is extraneous information, but he flew over a pothole and flew over the handlebars and broke his neck and sustained a C5, C6 spinal cord injury. So he had 3 service dogs trained through a program called Canine Companions for Independence, which they have training facilities all over the country, but their nearest facility is out of Delaware, Ohio, near Columbus. So one weekend, it was Parents Weekend, where they have, case conferences on each student, and, they tour the campus and what have you, and everybody goes to dinner. And he had pulled my parents in privately to his office and said, I don't know if you ever considered a service dog for Adria, but I think she'd be a really good candidate. And so my parents were like, yeah, she's always liked dogs. We just have never thought of anything like medically. So we had applied to a number of agencies and couldn't get any agency nationally, really, or at least in the Midwest, to accept a 24-year-old with verbal autism and mild cerebral palsy. Many times when you look at service dog programs that place for mobility, it is moderate to severe mobility, and definitely when you put autism in the equation, it many times was the more severe autism with the stereotypic behaviors, limited language, all that stuff. And a lot of them, they would do children and teens, but not adults. So we finally, Lucy was trained by a private dog trainer, and she was with me for 12 years. She retired about a year and a half ago. She was 12. She was trained to find the way home on cue when you said a specific word. And she also was trained for balance and stability on stairs for mild cerebral palsy and when walking. Thomas does more than that for the cerebral palsy. He'll pick up objects, he'll retrieve things. He also does like the stair stuff, but she also would help with like crossing streets. And before I had Lucy, I mean, I told you I was 24. I had never crossed the street independently without another adult in my entire life. So she gave me a level of freedom and a level of independence that I had never known. I remember one time I called my mother, who was a pediatrician for 36 years, and I said, Mom, I just went to Target. And she said, honey, you don't know how to do that. And I said, well, Lucy does. You know,
What a gift.
yeah.
Yeah.
So she absolutely opened up my entire world, and yeah. She became part of FUMC, and I mean, she would sit by the pew, and I would joke with Sarah Sparks Franklin, who was then the director of college ministry, that she was sitting praying for tennis balls after church.
And she now lives happily with your parents, right?
She does. I'm sorry. She's retired now, and they live at Lake Monroe, and so she walks around the yard and sniffs the yard and watches the deer, and you know, she comes to what we call dog camp at my apartment and spends the weekend with Thomas, and her you know, her playtime now consists of digging in the toy bin for about 5 minutes and then finding a toy and dropping it and giving it to Thomas.
Aww. So they love each other.
Oh my word, yes. As soon as you tell Thomas that he can get up in the morning, and then you tell Lucy, and you know, you get her out of the crate and you tell her word to get out, they have to give each other kisses. It's really funny.
Aww. So sweet.
Yeah.
So how did you, I mean, you were in Bloomington, you were doing the CIP program, you'd had Lou as your service dog. How did you end up at Open Door and at First Methodist? How did that happen?
Part of CIP is the social skills department to teach social skills in both a peer context and an employment or more professional context. And let me just say, for children and young adults with any type or any level of developmental disability, one of the biggest indicators of success later on in life is social connection and, you know, having a community where they feel valued. And so we started looking at outlets for me socially beyond just the program of CIP, where I could foster relationships positively with peers, you know, my own age. And back then, I mean, when I started CIP, I was 22 maybe, I think, 21, 22. You know, so 18, 21-year-olds, and for young people with developmental disability, regardless of the type or the level, the church or places of worship in general function not so much historically as places of academic study of, the Bible or whatever it be, but a social outlet where they can form relationships with people who share their values and beliefs and such. At least that's what always the church has been to me. And so we started looking at churches that offered not just youth programming, but college. And I came to Jubilee, and yeah, I was very struck by how genuine and how open-hearted, open-minded, and very receptive the young people were, and always have been. I mean, I was telling Pastor Lisa when we kind of went over like what I would address, that yeah, I mean, I at first did have a little bit of, not fear certainly, but anxiety, because growing up, especially in the teen years, I did realize that, quite early on, that many young people knew that I was different. They didn't necessarily know in what manner or what the diagnosis was. But interactions with peers as I grew were not always easy, and they were not always, dare I say, fun. So, I went, and everybody was very genuine, very receptive. And even when I pulled, a number of them aside and started going to lunch with them, started going to coffee with them, and explaining, what is Lucy for? What is, why might I have to come up to you and say, hey, can you tie my shoe? Because, I even told Pastor Lisa when we were going over stuff, like, the thing about developmental disability is that it never leaves you. It's not like you can go to church on Sunday at 10:30 or 11:45 and have a diagnosis, and then all of a sudden you go to lunch at 12:30 at Chipotle and, oh, I don't have it anymore. No. So you have to find young people that, at least I knew that I would have to, that would value me and that would welcome me regardless of what I brought to the table. And I was very pleasantly surprised that that's what I found here. In fact, I told her one of the first calls I made, other than to my parents, was to call Sarah McKinney, who's the director of religious services for Stonebelt. And I said to her, if you have any young people that are looking for a church that is open-minded, that is receptive of differences, please send them here. And I've told her that repeatedly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How has your faith and your understanding of God been shaped by this? Because you talked about you don't just get to walk out of here at 12:30 and not have a developmental disability or not be dealing with autism spectrum disorder. How have those journeys shaped your faith?
It kind of goes back to, let me just kind of back up a little bit. I knew that when I was enrolled in CIP, that it is actually advertised as a transitional independent living skills program for young adults with, autism, learning disabilities, attention deficit, all that whole umbrella. So I asked myself, literally, I remember I asked myself, Adria Nassim, what does the word transition mean? Transition meaning that you are here for a while and then you move on. So once my parents figured out that I could not only, finish a degree or, get a degree here. I didn't graduate from IU, I graduated from Brescia, but, get a degree, but I could build a life here because of the fact that the downtown area, is so walkable, and for me, never being able to have a license, you can walk to Starbucks and study, you can walk to the grocery, that I knew to have a meaningful life, I would have to use the social skills that they imparted upon me in 3.5 years, and the values, and certainly all the, going back to 2.5 and 3, all the developmental modeling my parents did on me all the way up, and just build relationships with people, because the whole world I knew the whole world was not going to exist in those 4 walls. I wanted more than just those 4 years. I wanted a community, and I wanted a place to belong. And so, I knew that part of that, a major, major part, was going to have to be that I would open up to people, and that would be, my name is Adria, and yeah, I do have this, that, and the other, and yeah, that there may be some people that were not comfortable with it. But for everybody that wasn't, I knew that there would be eventually people that were receptive to it. And, if I told Pastor Lisa when we were talking, I was kind of making a comment that for everybody that's not, go find the people that are, and spend time with them and get to know them more. Because, as I said, I can't change who I am. I mean, some people think that there's a cure for autism. Some people, ask me when I take questions from audiences, would you take a cure? Well, I don't have one yet. And honestly, no, I wouldn't. I mean, I've never known any other way. But basically, my assessment is if you're willing to accept me for everything that I come with and all my difficulties and all my shortcomings, I am willing to build a relationship with you and accept nothing less from you. So basically, I quoted Lady Gaga to Pastor Lisa. I said, "Don't hate me for it, baby, because I was born this way, And there's You are tired.
Yes. And you've worked now with both Lou and Mr. T. How has your faith and your understanding of God been shaped by this work that you do with these amazingly gifted pups?
Oh, Pastor Lisa, that was my favorite question. If we could just talk about that question.
I know. Let me just say, when I met Adria for lunch to talk about what we would talk about today, and we went out on Valentine's Day, and Adria was wearing a T-shirt that said, "My dog is my Valentine." It was awesome. It was the best.
Oh my goodness. Sometimes, I'll be honest, it's a volunteer position, but I do give speaking engagements and talk about my experience with ICANN, what ICANN does, and what having a service dog has done for me. And oh my goodness, let me back up and just give you some background. So I guess part of me, and I realized that none of you really did know me in my adolescent years or in high school, but I've always been very, very motivated. I was very motivated academically in high school. I did very well in school, minus a pretty significant learning disability in math. But even then, I wanted to do as well as I could, So once I graduated high school, I was in special ed services and regular ed, but predominantly the bulk of the day was general education with pull-out for math and study hall as I aged because of need for more individualized attention with the learning disability and the difficulty passing it used to be called iStep, now it's iLearn, I think, the math portion. But so finally, with a lot of support, I graduated high school. But most of my friends were general ed. And once they graduated, they were going off to college, they were going off to jobs. And even before that, I knew that when they left school for the day, they were going to jobs, they were going to whatever. I was not. I was very academically motivated, but what I did not have once my senior year ended was prospects for employment or further academic plans because I didn't have the social skills. And furthermore, I didn't have the independent living skills. My mom kind of, in so many words, she sums up, my adolescent experience to people that Adria could write essays on Shakespeare and get A's all day, but she needed to learn how to live in the bigger world and how to fold laundry, how to use a debit card, how to do things that young people her age do all the time. And that, because of those two factors, no, I wasn't going to go to grad school. I didn't have a job with Eli Lilly or whomever else lined up, even though I knew that I was very bright. And so after high school, you saw a lot of depression and just what in the world am I going to do with my life? So my mom thought, what are we going to do to help Adria be independent? And there's also a story as to why Lucy came into my life. I was 24 years old, between 22 and 24. And I had gone to do an assignment because I was in college and my English professor gave us a play to read. And I had gone to sit on a bench in our neighborhood and read. And I got lost in my own neighborhood. And I was probably 22 because of the extent of the learning disability. And it was a huge sprawling subdivision. So the type of learning disability that I have affects spatial relationship skills. I was very verbally bright, but in terms of being able to find your way around an environment, So my mom said, okay, if I'm about ready to send you, and I realize I'm jumping around here and I'm sorry, if I'm about ready to send you to an independent living skills program in Bloomington, Indiana, if you can't find your way around your own neighborhood, how in the world are you going to find your way around a city, especially a city like Bloomington, Indiana? So that's also part of what made my parents think, okay, we have got to get a dog. And I guess the dog, we got Lucy at 3 weeks old and put her in training with a professional trainer until she was 2.5. They usually start training these dogs when they're about 3 weeks until they're 2.5 years old, and then they're partnered. And I was part of the training the entire way. But what happened was that Lucy, even though I didn't have a paid job, Lucy became my job. Lucy became my purpose. It gave me somewhere to put my energy, somewhere to put my time, and something to do with my mind every day. And I had somebody who needed me to teach them right and wrong, to teach them discipline, self-control. And I have always liked to be held to a certain standard and to be, to do everything very, very well. And so to have this little living thing that needed to be taught certain standards of etiquette in public and behavior, oh my gosh, I was so excited. Yeah.
That is wonderful. That is wonderful. Thank you for sharing that story. We want to open it up to see if anybody else has some questions. And I think Espree's going to take the mic around.
Questions for Adria? Yes.
Yeah, Jeremiah has one.
So I work in a school that I am proud to say does an excellent job of building that community that you had said was so important for our students. We try to make our neurodivergent and anyone else with some disability feel welcome and help them participate in the school. What I have struggled with since I got there is some of our neurotypical teachers don't seem to fully get what the kids are struggling with. And so my question is, in your opinion and experience, is there a difference between teaching the kids social skills and teaching the kids to mask their disabilities? And if so, what is that difference?
Well, I suppose I should say social skills and whether or not to put a child in like a social skills program should always be a choice of the choice of the family or the child. Teaching a child to mask their disability, I don't believe that a child should ever have to, certainly to fit in any sort of environment. I'm glad that my parents put me in a social skills program. This is a very heated topic of debate in the autism community, whether to just let the child be themselves and have certain, shall we say, autistic tendencies or autistic patterns of behavior, or teach them typical social behavior, more like their peers. I found that, I didn't qualify for an autism diagnosis as a child because the definition for autism wasn't even expanded clinically until 2013, that summer. So I wasn't, back then when I was a child, it was just, moderate to severe autism with the limited language and the high presence of stereotypic behavior, possibly playing with a toy inappropriately, that sort of thing. So I, always first and foremost was diagnosed mild cerebral palsy and a learning disability. The autism didn't really begin to show, certainly in the social, there were tendencies when I was young, but certainly the social world did not become complex enough for clinicians to begin to wonder until I was about 15. But I'm glad that my parents chose to put me in a program that offered social skills instruction. I think that it helped me learn behavior that, I don't want to say fit in, that helped me fit in better, but it helped me learn how to mix and mingle better with typical young people, what they talk about, how they behave, and I felt like I was really part of their world. I kind of, when people ask me about social skills, I kind of equate it to being in a coma and then waking up after like a severe brain injury and having to make sense of the world. And, having social skills, it helped me make sense of the world and helped me develop relationships with people to the point that I no longer felt that I was on the periphery. I was part of their world. And for the first time in my life, I started to make reciprocal relationships with people and really get text from people and get, asked to do things. And I thought, oh my God, I think this is what, what it's like to have relationships with young people. So yeah, I think it was a good thing for me, but it depends on who you ask.
Thank you, Adria. Any more questions for Adria? Lennon has one, okay?
Yes, speaking about disabilities, I started in a program in Stillbelt in 2003 and when I was 21. So to show me how to make decisions and live on your own. And then I met a job coach when I was 21 And before I had my 22nd birthday, just 3 months before my 22nd birthday, almost 20 years ago. And then also, I found a first outside job out of Stone Belt. It's called Bloomington Hardware. I worked there for 15 years, and then also in 2005, I was 23. I in the very first time ever, I found a job independently. It's in downtown Chipotle, so independently. Just 3 months shy of my mom, prior to my mother's death. So, and my mom was only 53 years old when she passed away, and almost 18 years ago. And that answer to Adria's some of the questions. So about learning disabilities, learn how to live on your own, how to live in the world out of parents' care. So I finally do things on my own independently, and I've done so well really independently ever since. And I already am 41 years old, later be 42 this year. And I've been doing ever since, and I'm very happy that my social skills improved very well. I was disabled at the time. I became disabled at 14. So, and then I lived very independently, started living on my own, living by myself at 22. And it went real great.
Good
Thanks,
job.
Lennon.
Thanks for sharing. Do we have any other questions for Adria? John's got one, okay.
I just remember the first time I meet you, I just can't help come closer and say greeting your dog. But apparently you stopped me because previously I don't have any experience with a service dog. So could you share with me and probably someone else a little bit of experience how not to disturb a service dog from doing their work in their everyday life?
Just like show you how or tell you why?
Yeah. Just
Okay. So Mr. T or Thomas and other dogs like them, they get petted, they get played with, but many times they get played with when they're at home. Because when they're in public, from the time they're young puppies, they're taught that when the vest is on, they're working. So they have to focus on just their handler. And if people are coming up and talking to them too much and petting them, they can get confused and think that it's time to play. And it's not. And so what you want to do is you can look at them, but don't talk to them too much and try not to pet them unless somebody tells you can, because it can distract them.
thank you.
You're welcome.
I think we have time for one more question for Adria. Okay, I see David over here.
Really quick question. I noticed that you gave Mr. T a treat. Is that a regular thing that you reward him anytime he does something good? And what kind of treats do you give him?
Oh, no.
Because he has a dog, Odin, who doesn't do this, so he wants to know what kind of treats, right?
Okay, so now we do want to talk dog training. Okay, we might be here for a while. This is my favorite.
It's our favorite topic.
Oh, man. So this is also talking about some of the stuff we learned in the ICANN program and how they train their dogs. I mean, it could be different. If you're not an ICANN client or an ICANN volunteer, somebody else at Mannered Mutts or somebody at Mad for My Dog, they could tell you something totally different. This is just how the ICANN program handles their dogs. So, you're a good boy. Oh, it's so hard being up here. Well, no, this is actually a good example that he did that right then. But when you tell the dogs that are ICANN dogs, when you tell them DOWN and nothing after it, it means plant your rear end on the floor, or plant your body on the floor, excuse me, and don't move until I tell you. If you tell them DOWN, followed by YES, then you give a tangible reward. And that means like a goodie or something. That means you can stretch, you can scratch, you can look around. You may not get off said spot. And mind you, not all the dogs in the program need a spot. I was just told that His Majesty over here likes to wander and likes to be like, well, I'm tired of laying down. Let's go check out what's going on at this table. Let's go check out what's going on over here. No, let's not, please. They're having a meeting. Let's be a gentleman. So he gets, when he's in public and like I'm in a coffee shop or I'm in a restaurant, we take a towel or we take his little, I think some people have seen like his little LL Bean mat that he sits in here with. Something that the word for that is BED, but something where he knows that is your spot, that is your area. You may do whatever you choose on it as long as you don't go wander all the way to Tokyo and lick said congregation members' Starbucks over there. No.
And you also have said, like, you give him a portion of his food every day as the reward,
Yes.
right? That's actually his kibble in your pouch, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So he gets, hold on, I almost failed math, y'all, so bear with me for a minute. He gets a cup and a half for breakfast and a cup and a half for dinner. And then he gets a half cup of treats a day. And it's not like milk bone treats, it's not like bacon strips, it is actually his kibble that he is supposed to have had at breakfast. So all in all, what you're aiming for is the dog doesn't gain too much weight because he should have had it through the day anyway. What you're doing is you're periodically rewarding the dog for proper execution of cues and skills throughout the day. And I mean, he knows what good boy means. He knows what getting petted means. Every single cue that he performs, he is not getting a treat because that is how you make, and no offense if you do this to your dogs, but especially with a working dog, that is how you make them lazy and complacent very quickly. But yeah, every now and then he'll get a goodie.
All right. Well, Adria, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much to you and Mr. T for
Thank
being
you.
here.